Okay, I'm going to record me drawing the acorn just so you can see. Hopefully this is going to show up enough for you. If you feel comfortable drawing it without watching me do the contour drawing, then by all means you may skip it. But if you're wondering how I'm looking at it, I'm starting off with just my exterior lines basically. Really just keep looking back and forth at the picture to see where things should be and to make sure that I have them where they belong. Definitely have a circular, feels like here. Coming out here. Don't be afraid to make too many lines, especially, you know, you're using pencil, and you can erase it all, okay? So don't be afraid to use too many. So like I have a good bit of lines on there right now, and I'm going to go ahead and remove some of them here. Get rid of that circle that I put in, clean up my edges with my eraser, and then add now my contour lines. I'm gonna have this bottom part of it here. And if you remember, contour lines are just a lot like coloring book lines, but you're doing all the shadows and highlights. So I've got a fairly large highlight here in the acorn where the light is hitting it. There's still some lines that come through that. The individual lines, I'm not going to draw each little bump on there, okay? I am going to draw this line here, the shadow that this is making on the top part of this. And I'm drawing it darker than I normally would so that you can see it. There's some dark area over here. You just kind of have to like try to unfocus your eyes is the best way I can explain it, and look at where it's darker and where it gets lighter. So that's my contour drawing of the acorn. It's not perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect, okay? Once I have that, then I'm going back in and adding the hatching. And if you look at the list of the order you need to go into, it says, it's back on It's Learning, but the first thing is the contour lines and then horizontal hatching. So we're doing the wide hatching at this point of what needs to be done. And I'm going to switch to my Prismacolor. I'm using an 03 on this one. Prismacolor pen. And of course my horizontal are this way. All right, as much as I can do now, because this is at an angle, I'm probably going to work a little bit this way and this way to keep the lines going the right direction. So closer together in the darker areas, but still thinking of it very much like it's on planes. So you can see that my lines are very neat at this point. Very precise. No quick marks. I noticed that a lot of you are adding like quick marks and just kind of going a little bit fast. And it is a different style and a look, but I want you to practice really being precise. So you're being very intentional about your mark making. Okay? So I'm just going to keep moving this around. This. Add some more. I'm going to make these lines a little bit longer and try to make them a little bit further apart. I'm not trying to get the complete value at this point because this is just the first set of lines, but I am thinking ahead to that stage. So placing more space in between these lines than I did the previous level of line. But still thinking about the contour of the object and how these lines would curve around. Okay. Let's go ahead and come in here and add these shadow lines. These lines are fairly close together. Right here. Okay. And then I want to look at the cap now and using hatching to create the shapes that I need to make here. So there are definitely some, almost triangular shapes in here. So for this one, I'm going to start with a diagonal line and work with that. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do these lines that curve to the shape, but I'm going to keep it pretty wide and not close together, just defining the shape of this and the contours of the shape. Not really focusing on value yet and where things belong. So we just got that first bit of value on that, and then I'm going to come back in here now and do some diagonal lines. And I definitely want these on, I think, the whole thing. I gotta switch back to my picture. But I'm keeping them wide for right now because I want to layer this. I don't want it to feel flat. And I want to layer it, and it's already feeling pretty flat. So I'm going to go ahead and add some more lines in here where I know it's going to be dark. This was one of my darker areas right here. On the stem, doesn't really have a whole lot of darker areas. I'm going to do the vertical lines here. And I'm just going to stop for just a minute and come back to that later when we're getting ready to add some darker lines. Now, back to this part of the acorn, I'm going to do the lines that are vertical. And this accounts for a lot of the texture of an acorn and just in general. So I'm trying to be very thoughtful and look at my image, keep looking back and forth at where these go, where they appear to be closer together to make it look darker, where they appear to be farther apart for the lighter areas, when they need to be shorter, when they need to be longer, all of that. Just keep looking back and forth at your picture. And down here, there seem to be a lot more. This is where it is getting darker. So I'm going to put some shorter lines closer together towards the bottom here. But again, I'm really looking at where I'm placing them. I'm not just hatching away at it, and I'm looking at where there's a space where it fits so that I don't get a lot of overlapping lines that would then create too dark of an area. Now I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is get to the part where I'm doing my outline so I can see where these areas go. Hatch this shadow right here too. Short little lines diagonally. I'm going to come across. This is one of the darkest areas here. Okay. And there. So I'm going to go ahead and do a light bit of outlining. Super light. Still working with my 03. Dotted line in places. Not drawing a harsh solid line. Not ready for that yet. Might not use that at all. But I just want to get kind of the little bit more of the form down so I can get this texture right at the top. And acorns, they're pretty challenging. On this side, I'm making the line a little bit darker, a little bit thicker. I'm going to come over here, get this side of it, and then I want to resolve what's happening with this bottom part of the acorn. There. Okay. So now I'm just really going to focus on finishing this area up and trying to make this look a little bit more like the texture of the acorn itself. And I'm going to do that by darkening certain areas and certain lines. So not like everything. So there's definitely like this pattern on here of like triangular. So I'm going to come in and just darken some of these lines. You know, I don't want to create a huge pattern, but I do want it to feel like that texture. And this is not near dark enough. I'm still going to add, but I'm going to add that, darken in some of these sections of this line to create different widths. And that's your line quality. When you start talking about the widths of your lines, that's your line quality. It could also be how wavy the line is, or how jagged the line is. But it's important in creating these textures and trying to emulate them with line, which is challenging. I feel like this is a hot mess right now. It just takes so much practice to do this and to feel confident in doing it. So this is the example that you're working on today, where you're layering and using all the different types of line. I think I'm going to call that done because right now I feel like I'm just going to work it to death if I don't. It's not perfect. It's practice, right? All right, so you can see that I already did the pine cone here, and I used a lot of layering with it as well. The other option that you have is not layering the line. So I already have, I don't know if you can see it. This is hard to manipulate this thing to get everything in. Here's the pumpkin. Here's the pumpkin right here. I know it's probably kind of light for you guys. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of so you can see it, is I'm going to go ahead and outline the major lines first, which is not what I would want you to do typically. All right. And then I'm going to just do one layer of lines on the pumpkin. All right. You know what it looks like. I mean, I added layers to here. You could just do contour lines on your pine cone. But just contour lines is pretty basic. You know what that looks like. But, let's go ahead and do the pumpkin here and only add one layer of lines. So let me get to my pumpkin picture over here on my computer. All right. So I'm going to start with the stem, and I'm not going to draw it all because it's going to run into my picture. And when I'm doing practice pages, I mean, I don't want to draw tiny. You should be drawing fairly large, like this is the length of my finger, you know, here. Those of you that were drawing like teeny tiny yesterday, you need to try not to do that. You need to get larger with your drawings, okay? But I'm going to hit my stem here. I'm going to go ahead and do these lines that come down on my stem, because it's a contour drawing at this point. And get in my heavy lines on the pumpkin. And I still like a line that breaks. I don't like a solid dark line. I just think that it takes away, it starts to look like a coloring book. I just don't like it. So if you like a really nice solid line and that's the style that you think that you're going to work in, that's fine. If it's going to be that way, they need to be super crisp and not wavy or bumpy. Still using that 03 pen for this. Just getting all my lines in, okay? So those are my basic lines of a pumpkin. So if you were just doing one layer, that's about what you would have for that. So what we're going to do now is go back and just add one layer. Sorry, if you were just doing contour, this is what it would look like. If you're just doing one layer, we're just going to add horizontal lines to this. Okay, so I'm looking at my dark areas, and what's really important here is that I'm kind of curving with the pumpkin as much as I can in a very kind of like, I don't know, way that looks like planes. Okay, so doing some little short lines in this. This is one of my dark shadows. Super close together, but short lines. Okay, gonna come over here. I believe this is one of my highlights, so I'm gonna come in here with these lines. None of these go long and across because this is not a flat object. Each of these ridges are curved, and if you're thinking about it, you know, in planes, then it's got to kind of curve with it, and if you go flat across, it's going to get flat. It's going to look really flat, and it's not going to look realistic at all. So kind of creating this area where the lines are dashed, but they're representing each plane as it moves across the pumpkin is what we're trying to do here. Okay, I'm gonna come here and just keep going. This is a lighter area here compared to this area, so these lines are further apart than the lines beside them. So for every like 2 lines, I'm doing 1 line in this area. Another little dark area, super close together lines. As we come around this area here, this just takes a lot of precision to do 1 layer, right? This is not a fast and furious, might have already said that, exercise in hatching. Very precise, thinking about where you're layering each area. You can see this, it takes a lot of time when you're doing it correctly. It's just not a fast process. I hope you have taken time to look at Augusta Lamb's Instagram because, oh my gosh, she has so many really cool pictures on there that, and it just really shows like how much she's grown. And you can see like what it really takes to get better. This not getting better at art is just not a fast process. I wish it was, but it's slow and methodical and takes practice. And her site is just a really great example of that, because it shows her progression over the years. She does commissions. I think she's illustrated a book now. All of that, just starting out from this simple challenge to herself to draw every day. I mean, it just goes to prove like what you could do with the time you have if you make a commitment to really like practicing something and getting better at it. She is way better at this than I am. This is a little bit of a struggle for me right now, but okay. So you can see where I'm going with this. I don't know that you really want to watch me do the entire thing, but one layer is it. Like, I'm not going to cross hatch over this at all. I'll finish this and post a picture of it so you can see what it looks like finished. So you have 3 objects that you have images of. You have the acorn, the pine cone, and the pumpkin. And you can do it however you would like. One has to be contour only, okay? And this will be on the page, so you don't have to remember it, but one has to be contour only. One has to be one layer only, okay, which is like the pumpkin, just the one horizontal lines focused like this. And one has to be multiple layers. It can be 2 or 3 or 4 layers. That's where you're crossing over it, much like we did, especially here in this section. I don't know if y'all can see that. Let me check my camera. Of the teapot, yeah, right here, where there's lines going across, there's lines going up and down, there's lines going diagonally. This is your layers, okay? So I just want y'all to experiment with what that looks like on a variety of objects. We stuck with very simple objects yesterday with the mug and the pitchers and the water jug, and these objects today are more complex. Especially the pine cone. All right, when you're drawing the pine cone, I'm just going to give you a couple hints on drawing a pine cone. Let's flip this and let me make sure where I'm drawing on this paper you can see. Let me get my pencil back up and my pine cone picture. But when you're drawing the pine cone, this is how you should think about it, okay? Think about it in shapes. So look, this is like, if you look at your picture that I gave you of the pine cone, got this shape at the top and it comes down, okay? And then I'm going over here and I have this one here and it comes down and it has a lighter area here, okay? These that pop out at you, all right, those are the harder ones, all right? So there's here, and then you've got this shape right here, and this is the top that's coming out at you. It's almost like a stretched out heart right here. But look, keep going back and forth, looking at where all of this stuff kind of falls. There's one right here. It's coming out here, okay? Look at the negative space, the space that's created, like I'm about to draw this negative space here. So think if I'm drawing a shape in between here, I have this line here, I'm going to go up, and I'm just looking right now at the negative space around, and especially this shape right here and what that made. Okay, here where this is there's another one of these. It's not a petal, but you know, it's sticking out at you right here, and you can see the stem part of that there. And then I'm going to go back up here and make sure I finish off this piece right here. This comes down here. It's just constantly looking back and forth at what you're doing. It's not easy, but it's not hard if you're paying attention to what you're doing. It just takes practice and your hand-eye coordination. All right. And while it's not looking like much of a pine cone right now, it might not until I get the values and all of that added in. So this is this one, this is here. Looking at everything in relationship to each other. This is another one of these things coming down. Okay, and it's going here. Trying to get to a point where you can kind of see it coming together, so it's not as vague. Just looking at these shapes and the negative spaces that they are creating. And I think I got a little bit separated here. This needs to be up higher, but hopefully you can see what I mean by creating these shapes and what they look like, and just really paying attention between each one, what the spaces are in between them, because that helps you put them in the right place. Like looking at this gap, does this gap here match the gap on the picture? And then once you get your contour drawing, then going back and adding your hatching. I know if you look it up online, that you could find a picture, a YouTube video of somebody drawing a pine cone, and it would probably be better than mine. But you can see kind of how to get started on that. So those are the three you're doing today: acorn, pine cone, and pumpkin. All right, and then we're going to move on to stippling next. So remember, draw good size. This is a full-size sketchbook, and you can see that, you know, each drawing is about the length of my finger, my index finger, and it's easier to draw that big. The cup is smaller, the acorn's smaller, but you know, these are fairly decent size. It makes it easier. It's not more time consuming. It's more time consuming to try to make something look right and smaller. Okay?